All her life, Nange dreamt of finding a good husband, having a nice house and beautiful children. Since she was small, she listened to her mother's advice carefully. She learned how to cook and clean, hoping to attract a husband. She always smiled and nodded when the men in her town spoke to her, never raising her voice, dressing indecently, or expressing her opinions too strongly. She went to church regularly, practicing modesty and doing everything expected of her to catch a husband. But even with all her efforts, by the age of 30, Nange was still not married. In her town, weddings were happening every day. Friends from school married wealthy men who had returned from abroad, and younger girls she had helped care for were getting married before her. It felt like a race, and every day someone else was tying the knot. Nange started to wonder what was wrong with her. She knew she was not ugly and did everything right, just like her mother had taught her. So why was no man interested in marrying her? One day, Nange was at her friend's wedding. On her way back from the restroom, she overheard some of her friends making fun of her. They whispered and laughed, saying that no man wanted her, and joked about her getting old without a husband. This made Nange very sad. That night, she sat in her room and prayed to God to send her a husband soon. She used to dream of a particular kind of husband. Now she just wanted any man. She did not care if he was rich or poor or had good manners or not. She just wanted a husband so that people would stop whispering about her. That night, she cried out to God, "God, please, just send me a husband. Any husband would do. I don't care anymore." A few days later, Nange was coming back from the market. She had gone to buy vegetables to cook for her mother. Absent-mindedly, she almost got hit by a car. She screamed and fell to the ground as the car came to a stop. Her heart was beating so fast. For a moment, she was not sure if she was alive, dead, or injured, and could not feel the pain because of the confusion in her head. As she lay on the ground, the owner of the car ran out of the car and rushed to her. He apologized worriedly and helped her stand. When Nange stood up, she looked at the man who almost ran her over. She was surprised by how handsome he was. He had dark skin, a well-groomed beard, and wore a very nice agbada that showed he was rich. His smile was warm and his eyes were kind. Nange could not stop staring at him. He offered to drive her home and insisted when she refused. He dropped her in front of her house and told her to take care. That whole night, Nange could not stop thinking about the man. A smile came to her face whenever he crossed her mind, and she regretted not asking for his details. She had been in such shock that she had forgotten to ask his name. While memories of him made her heart beat fast, she sighed with sadness, knowing she would never see him again. The following week, another one of Nange's friends was getting married. In the bride's dressing room, there was laughter and talk about the latest, hottest rich man in town. The girl said he was new to town and that he was an oil tycoon. All the girls in town wanted to be his wife. The good news was that he was coming to the wedding to meet the ladies of the town. The girls dressed up extra nicely because of this. All the single ladies looked their best to catch the tycoon's eye. And even some married ladies too. When the rumored rich tycoon walked into the wedding venue, the ladies went crazy trying to impress him. Nange looked up and to her shock, saw the man who almost ran her over the other day. Her heart started beating fast again. When he looked over and saw Nange, a smile of recognition spread across his face. He left all the ladies lined up in front of him and walked up to Nange. Her heart almost melted. When he stood next to her, he bowed like a gentleman, kissed her hand, and asked for a dance. All the girls stared with their mouths wide open, jealousy written on their faces. Nange smiled secretly, feeling victorious that he chose her. All those times they made fun of her, it was finally her turn. They could all go and choke for all she cared. The whole evening she danced in his arms while the other ladies watched with envy. His name was Bona. It felt like a fairy tale. After that day, a sweet romance started between them. Bona dropped Nange off at home after the dance, and when he left, Nange's mother came out of the house and stared as his nice car drove away. She then asked Nange for details and started dancing, saying her daughter had finally landed a husband, and a rich one at that. Nange tried to tell her mother that it was not like that, but she did not listen. The next day, Bona showed up to Nange's house without any warning. He brought gifts for Nange's mother and took Nange on a date. He was very charming and patient, and Nange felt like she was living in a romance novel. He took her to fancy places and parties, showing her off to his rich friends. In just 2 weeks, he asked her to marry him, which was fast. But who cared? This is what she had prayed for. On the day he proposed, he planned a surprise party for Nange and invited all her friends. When she walked in, lights came on, and there was Bona kneeling with an expensive ring in his hand. Nange screamed and jumped with excitement as she said yes. Their engagement was all over social media. The comments were filled with girls admiring and envying Nange for landing such a catch. They all wished they were in her shoes. Their wedding became the talk of the town. Big, lavish, with enough food and drink for everyone. Important people from all over the country came to attend. Bona loved to show off and spared no expense. Pictures of their fairy tale wedding flooded social media again. Everywhere Nange went after that, people showed her respect. Those who used to look down on her now stood up when she walked into a room. They called her Madame Bona and went out of their way to please her. Having a husband, especially one as rich as Bona, made life so easy for her. Bona asked Nange to quit her secretary job, saying he did not want his wife to be stressed, which she was happy about. After all, she did not need the salary anymore. Their house was big and beautiful, just like Nange had always wanted. She had everything she could dream of. Servants, cars, nice clothes, fancy jewelry, and new friends from high society who had ignored her before, but now they hung on her every word. She had it all. At night, she would kneel down and thank God for her good fortune. The first few months of their marriage were perfect. Bona was patient and he treated her like a princess, both in public and at home. He became even more loving when she told him months after their wedding that she was pregnant. He was so thrilled that he bought her a car she did not even need because she already had many. Everything was just perfect. But 6 months into her pregnancy, Bona's behavior started to change. He became impatient, always asking Nange when the baby was coming and why it was taking so long. This confused Nange because she thought everyone knew that babies usually come after 9 months. Why was Bona acting like a pregnancy could be rushed? It all started one day when he asked her when her due date was, and when she told him that it was still 3 months away, he sighed, seeming disappointed by her answer. He asked her the same question that evening, and then the next day and the day after that. The more she told him that the baby was not due for another 3 months, the more disappointed he seemed. One evening, they were watching the news in the living room after dinner. Nange was sitting with her feet on Bona's lap while he caressed her stomach. He loved doing that, talking to their baby, telling it about his day, and singing to it in his off-key voice. Nange enjoyed the feeling of him talking and touching their baby. But that day, something strange happened. While caressing her stomach, Bona suddenly stopped and yelled at her stomach in a voice Nange did not recognize. "Hurry up and come out, you little time waster." Nange pulled back in shock, protecting her stomach with her hands. She asked him what was going on. His eyes turned red and his face twisted in a way she had never seen before. He pointed at her stomach and said in a tone he had never used with her before, "You have one job, woman. Hurry up and do it." He walked out and slammed the door behind him. Nange stood there for a long time, trying to understand what had just happened. Bona stayed out that night, and when he returned the next morning, he was full of apologies. He went down on his knees and apologized over and over, saying he did not know what had come over him. He promised it would never happen again. He begged and begged until Nange forgave him, thinking that he had been good to her all along. Maybe it was just one mistake, one bad day for him. Things continued as normal between them after that. On the day Nange went into labor, Bona was so excited. He rushed her to the hospital and wanted to go into the delivery room with her. But the midwives asked him to wait outside. He reluctantly agreed, blowing Nange kisses of encouragement as they took her away. He was practically bouncing on his toes, which made Nange smile even though she was in pain. An hour later, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When the midwives placed the baby in Nange's arms, she stared at her son lovingly. He was so beautiful, and her heart filled with so much love. Just then, the doors of the maternity ward burst open and Bona walked in. Nange gave him a tired but happy smile, silently inviting him to come over and meet their son. But something very strange happened. Bona stood at the door, looking not at Nange and their newborn baby with excitement as one would expect. His eyes were focused on something the midwife was holding in her hands, and his face was stone cold without any emotion. Confused, Nange watched him march across the room to the midwife and demand in a cold voice to have the baby's placenta. The midwives were shocked by his request, as was Nange, and they all looked at each other. Bona repeated himself, becoming angry. The head midwife told him that it was unethical for her to give him the placenta, but he took a threatening step toward her. Frightened by both his physique and his status in the town, the midwife reluctantly handed him the placenta. As soon as he had it, Bona wrapped the placenta in a handkerchief and quickly left the room without even looking at his wife or their newborn baby. Everyone in the room stared after him, puzzled. Something even stranger happened after he left the room. The baby in Nange's arms started coughing uncontrollably. The baby coughed and shook and cried as if in pain. The midwives rushed to help, but the coughing only got worse. Nange cried, asking what was wrong with her baby. The room went quiet all of a sudden. The baby stopped coughing and crying. One of the midwives turned to Nange and gave her an apologetic look. Nange just knew that her baby was dead. She screamed, her heart hurting so much she thought she would die too. How could her baby be fine 1 minute and then dead the next? Her mother rushed into the room and held her as she cried. Bona did not come back to comfort his wife. He did not even show his face at the hospital for the 2 days she was there, recovering and mourning her baby. When Nange was discharged from the hospital, she came home to find the most romantic scene. There were roses starting from the gate to the house, with notes of apology from Bona on the walls everywhere. Inside the house, she found him kneeling with a bouquet of white flowers, looking apologetic. Before Nange could even say anything, because she had so much to say, she was so angry, Bona started speaking first. He said he was ashamed of his actions and that he had not come back to see her at the hospital because he was so ashamed to face her after what he had done. Nange demanded to know what was so important about the baby's placenta, and he laughed uncomfortably, saying it was nothing, just a silly family tradition. All the men in my family do it. It is to make sure that our baby has a long and healthy life. It's harmless. Nange was not sure if she believed him or not, but did not have a reason not to. After that, he showered her with gifts and apologized every day until she was forced to forgive him. Several months later, she became pregnant again. Bona continued to treat her nicely. On the day she went into labor for the second time, he was at work. He excitedly told her over the phone that he was on his way to the hospital. Nange gave birth to a beautiful daughter this time, and when the midwives placed her baby in her arms, Nange felt an overwhelming sense of joy. She had not thought that her heart could be filled with so much love and happiness again after she lost her first baby. She silently promised her baby that nothing was going to happen to her. Just then, Bona walked into the delivery room. He was dressed in a black outfit and sweating as if he had run there. Nange excitedly called him over to meet their daughter. But just like the first time, he wasn't even paying her attention or their baby. He walked right past Nange and the baby and went straight to the midwife, his appearance emotionless. "Where is the placenta?" he demanded in a cold voice. The midwife, same one from last time, exchanged a worried look with Nange and then handed Bona the placenta without a word. Nange held her baby tightly as she watched him wrap their baby's placenta in his white handkerchief. She felt a deep kind of fear she could not explain. It was like she already knew what was coming. Bona quickly left the room after that, and immediately as he left, the baby started coughing and shaking in Nange's arms. Nange knew what had happened even before the midwives told her that her baby was dead. Again, something changed inside Nange after that. She suspected that Bona had something to do with the deaths of their two children. The whole placenta thing and the explanation he had given her did not sit right in her head. She had tried to forget it, to tell herself that she was just being paranoid. But how come every time her babies died immediately after he left the room? Bona did not come back to the hospital after that. And when she was discharged, she went home to find him waiting with flowers, gifts, and apologies as usual. For the first time since they got married, Nange thought maybe she had made a mistake by marrying Bona. It was like she did not know the man she had married at all. She thought about divorcing him, but she worried about what people would say. Divorce was a taboo in her town, even worse than being unmarried. She thought of how her friends would laugh and make fun of her, and the idea of divorcing Bona left her mind. She decided to endure the marriage. Her mother had taught her that a good wife kept her marital problems to herself and tried to solve them within the house to avoid whispers, so she did not confide in anyone. Months after her second child died, Nange became pregnant again. This time, fear overshadowed her joy. The thought of losing her baby again gave her sleepless nights. She was convinced there was something terribly wrong with Bona. She had not wanted to get pregnant again, but he manipulated her into it, accusing her of not wanting to give him children and threatening to marry a second wife if she did not comply. He acted as if losing a child was nothing, as if she was supposed to just get over it and move on. As her due date approached, Nange grew more determined to protect her baby. On the day she went into labor, she called Bona as usual. He was at work and rushed to the hospital with excitement. But Nange had a plan. She pulled the head midwife aside and whispered, "No matter what, Do not give my husband the placenta. When Bona arrived, he went straight for the placenta, as Nange knew he would. Where is the placenta? He demanded. The midwife, afraid but determined, said, I don't have it. What do you mean by you don't have it? Bona's voice was low and dangerous. I destroyed it, she replied, her voice calm. Bona's eyes turned wild. He began tearing the room apart, searching everywhere, flinging things across the room. I need that placenta, he shouted, his voice booming around the room. He was crazy. You don't understand. He will kill me. Nange clutched her baby to her chest, watching in horror. Who will kill you? She asked, her voice shaking. My master, Bona screamed at her. There were veins showing on his face, and he had kicked off his shoes and hat and was twitching as if there was something itchy moving under his skin. There was something very wrong with him. I made a deal with the devil for wealth, okay? He continued. I have to give them our baby's placentas, or he will take everything from me. I can have anything I want as long as I bring the placenta within 30 minutes of birth. He likes them fresh, with fresh blood still dripping from them. He eats them, and it sucks the life out of our children and makes him stay young forever. The more children you give birth to, the more money we have, Nange. Don't you love having money, Nange? All these nice things you have, don't you love having them? We just have to give them our children. It's that easy. His eyes were crazy and his movements were not his. Nange slapped her hand around her mouth to keep her screams from leaving her mouth. She could not believe what she was hearing. She had suspected all along that he had something to do with the deaths of their children. But to hear him open his mouth and say it, she could not take it. You killed our babies for money? She whispered, tears running down her face. Bona went down on his knees before her, desperation in his eyes. I had no choice, Nange. Please give me the placenta. I don't want to die. It's gone, Nange said, swallowing her tears. She held her baby even tighter. I told the midwife to destroy it. On hearing that, Bona's face twisted in terror. Suddenly, he backed away from Nange, looking at some invisible figure behind her. Please, master, forgive me. He begged this invisible person that only he could see standing behind Nange. The person was clearly coming for him based on the way he was crawling backwards on the floor, frightened out of his mind. Spare me, I beg you, master, please. He started screaming and clutching his head as if in pain. No, please. He flinched and twisted as if someone was beating him. Nange watched in horror as Bona got up and ran out of the room, screaming in agony. The nurses and doctors, who had all gathered in the room because of the noise and commotion, also stood there watching, frozen in shock and exchanging puzzled looks. Nange never saw Bona again after that day. News of what happened spread all over town. Nange did hear from a friend, though, that Bona was still running from his invisible master. 2 women also visited Nange shortly after the news spread, sharing similar stories of being married to Bona in a different town and losing their babies to his greed. Nange listened, her heart heavy with shared pain. Strange men came to claim Bona's property after he ran away. Nange did not argue with them. She left everything behind, taking only her baby and moving back in with her mother. She wanted nothing to do with Bona's blood money. People in the town whispered and mocked her situation. But Nange did not care. She focused on raising her child, finding peace in her simple life. She learned a valuable lesson that rushing into marriage for the sake of appearance can lead to unimaginable sorrow. Being single is better than being trapped in a nightmare. She wished she had known that sooner.